Hi everyone, I'm Kristin Hawkins. I'm the president of Students for Life of America and Students for Life Action. I'm also the host of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast, and I am so excited to be joining you all there in the UK for this live stream event this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions and hopefully answering some of your questions. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing here in the United States, and what we're really striving towards. And I'm hoping, I'm praying that just educating you a little bit about what's happening in the States will serve as motivation for you, to strengthen your convictions to keep going forward and keep marching forward there in the UK and across the world. I believe there are moments in every social justice movement that determine the fate of the cause. Something that's happened, where a leader or a group of leaders makes a choice, to go left or to go right, to fall back or push forward in the midst of controversy, to play it safe or take an incredible risk that could mean failure or defeat, a setback for a number of years, to play nice, to make friends with those in political power, or to call the shots as they see them, which might make you lose some friends. I think that there's moments that if we look back especially in social movements here in the United States, I'm particularly thinking about the 1950 and 1960s civil rights movement here, where certain strategic decisions were made that really determined the fate of the movement. And I think that's so critical. It's something that I think about a lot as a leader in the pro-life movement, someone who's constantly making decisions and sometimes having to make very quick decisions about, do we go here or do we go here? How do we respond to this setback? Do we push forward at this moment even when finances may not be secure? I think about, when I think about the 1960s and 1950s civil rights movement here in the United States, the fight for full and equal protection, and equality in the law for African Americans. I think about the moment when Emmett Till's Mother Till, decided to have an open casket at her son's funeral. If you're not familiar with the story of Emmett Till, I would encourage you to go to Google, read it. Essentially, he was a young black boy from, I believe, somewhere in Chicago area in the Midwest, traveled down to family in the South. It was reported that he had whistled or made a comment to a white woman, and for that crime, he was lynched, tortured, beaten, and basically thrown into a river. And his body was discovered. It was mangled and swollen. You could see the proof of the torture that he had endured for a very long time before he finally succumbed to his injuries. And it was a pivotal moment because when his body was finally returned up north to his mother chose to leave the casket open. And her quote is very infamous because she said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." And Emmett Till's mangled, swollen face was, I believe, on the cover of Jet or Ebony magazine, a very large African American magazine. But it was that moment of Mother Till leaving the casket open when Rosa Parks was asked why in Montgomery she didn't give up her seat on the bus that day. Rosa Parks directly mentioned the actions of Mother Till, that she kept thinking about Emmett Till and the torture and the pain and the death that he suffered simply because he was black. And then you think about Rosa Parks being arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, which led to the Montgomery bus boycotts, where activists from around the, across the country actually gathered to boycott the segregated bus system in the South, which then led to the sit-ins in Greensboro, North Carolina, where college students at North Carolina A&T University sat down at the Woolworth Department lunch counter, a whites only lunch counter, on a dressed in their Sunday best clothes, and refused to move despite all the sneers, the comments, despite eventually being arrested. Those 4 students were arrested, but the next day 8 students came, and the next day more students came, and soon these lunch boycotts spread across the country, across the South. We saw the decision of one courageous woman who lost her son inspire the actions of thousands, of absolute thousands, that created a national conversation about what was happening in the American South. I guess I wish sometimes when I'm delivering presentations like this, I wish that I were gifted in speech, where I could come up with some great cadence for what we must do as a moment. But I think that in brass tacks, what we must do as a pro-life movement, whether it's here in America or over there in the UK, is that we have to keep moving forward, and we have to be proud to keep moving forward. In the United States, we've seen some incredible victories. During the 4 years that President Donald Trump was president, we saw some incredible victories in the pro-life movement. Now, regardless of how you feel about the former president's Twitter feed, and I have my own opinions on that, but there are children, there are toddlers today who are alive in the United States of America because of the positions, the policy positions, because of the personnel that President Trump put into place in his administration. But now, as you all know, and as you've been seeing, we have a new president here in the United States, a very pro-abortion president. In fact, a president who, when he was senator for decades, kind of portrayed himself as a moderate on abortion, said he opposed taxpayer funding of abortions, and now recently just proposed, just last week, a budget that for the first time since 1976 will force Americans, regardless of how they view abortion, to fund abortion. We have the FDA, which had been prohibited from funding, using taxpayer funds, from funding research that involves buying the body parts of aborted children. That research has been reinstated and refunded. We have an FDA now who had, at one point, 10 years back, had advocated that chemical abortions were dangerous, that there needed to be certain, they're called REMS, they're safety risk mitigation strategies put in place to make sure that women, we know that chemical abortion, one person dies in a chemical abortion if successful, but we certainly don't want 2 people to die in abortion. Those REMS that were once advocated even by a pro-abortion administration, President Obama's presidential administration, now they kind of said, well, they're not necessary because of COVID, even though it's extremely dangerous. And you all know about that. So we have a lot that we're facing. There's a bill in our United States Congress right now titled the For the People Act, which essentially tried to bring cancel culture to make public the list of supporters of pro-life organizations, political organizations, and nonprofits. That would be devastating to a lot of folks who could have their businesses protested for simply supporting the pro-life movement or any other cause that the woke Hollywood elites would, are against at the moment. So there is a lot going on. There's a lot that we are certainly on the defensive about in the pro-life movement right now. But I think the question is for us here in America, and I think the question is for you all there in the UK, is when there's so much stacked up against us, do we adopt a losing mentality? Do we resign ourselves to the fact that, nothing can be done, it's impossible, our politics is broken, our culture is broken, have this losing mentality, and just kind of go home, or maybe not work as hard as we should? Or do we do something unexpected? Do we push harder than ever before to get our message out there, to show the world how proud we are to be pro-life, how proud we are to be anti-abortion? And I think that I don't speak for the entire pro-life movement. We have a very diverse pro-life movement, but I do hope that I speak for the majority of our pro-life movement to say that we refuse to fall into despair. We refuse to be deterred, and we refuse to be bullied into silence. I think what's interesting, and I was thinking about you all today especially, every year when we have our American March for Life, we do a National Pro-Life Summit. It's the world's largest pro-life conference. If you can get to the United States in January, I highly encourage you to come. And we are always blessed to have leaders from pro-life organizations from across the globe: Scotland, Croatia, Australia. And I always get like these questions of, what is going on in the pro-life movement? What potentially makes the pro-life movement here in the United States different from other countries? And I'm always asking the same question too: is what can we learn from other nations and their fights? And we have some of the most extreme abortion laws in the world. Our Supreme Court, thanks to the Roe v. Wade and Doe versus Bolton decisions, the two decisions in 1973 that legalized abortion up until the moment of birth. Now, American states can restrict abortion. Some states have restricted abortion at 20 weeks. Some states have restricted at 24 weeks. There's a Supreme Court case right now that's restricted at abortion at 15 weeks. But throughout the United States, there are places you can go to have an abortion, a birthday abortion, up until the moment of birth. But what's interesting about our pro-life movement, I think, when you think about and you study other movements, is that we still today in America, despite these extreme abortion laws, have this amazing March for Life that happens every year. In fact, I don't know of any other social movement in the history of the world that turns out more people every single year than the American pro-life movement at the March for Life. That's incredible. Like, after almost 50 years of legal abortion, we haven't gone away, despite having these crazy extreme abortion laws that put us, on the scale of North Korea and China and Canada with our extremism or abortion laws. And I never want to be in a listing with those countries, usually ever. So I question, like, what makes our pro-life movement different? Why, in this country where there's such extreme abortion laws, do we have such an active and vibrant pro-life community, where we have pro-life organizations and ministries springing up? Our Students for Life leaders and our fellows that we're honored to work with over the years, I ask them all the time, well, what is it that you want to do? And I frequently hear, I want to start a pregnancy center. I want to start an adoption center. I want to start this ministry. And so we have this whole like pro-life ecosystem that's been created in the United States. And I think, honestly, one of the differences that we see between the American pro-life movement and the pro-life movements in other countries, and just the large scale of this pro-life movement, is that we're just kind of relentless. We're kind of we're kind of stubborn. We're gritty. We refuse to give up. We refuse to remain silent or wait our turn, because, as Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in his letter from Birmingham jail, which, if you've never read his letter that he wrote when he was imprisoned in the Birmingham jail, I highly encourage you to do it. You can do it in the afternoon. One of the phrases and that I took away from that, I've read it several times now, he said, Martin Luther King Jr., when he wrote this letter, let me give you some preference. I guess I have to do that. He wrote this letter, and a lot of people think he wrote the letter to like racists, but he didn't write the letter to racists. He wrote the letter to white clergymen, to people who said, we're with you, we agree, there has to be something done about segregation in the South, about the way African Americans are being unjustly, unfairly treated, but this isn't the way to go about it. This isn't the tactic, doing these marches in the street, doing these boycotts. This isn't working. And he wrote this letter to those folks. And he talked about how justice, denied is justice delayed is justice denied, and how the enemy isn't the Ku Klux Klansman, the person who is actively seeking out to harm African Americans. The real threat to their movement were those who preferred a negative peace, which was the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. But he says in this letter, he says, when someone tells us to wait, it almost always means never. And I think that resonates so much in our pro-life movement, especially when you talk about the politics. When in the pro-life movement, which we all know, the pro-life movement and what we do is a human rights movement. This is not a political movement, but we all understand that politics is a place we engage, is a way we engage to save lives. But there's constantly this pressure when we enter into that political fold to wait our turn, to wait till this election, to wait till we get this person or this person that we support rises to power. But that's something we always have to think about. When someone tells you to wait in the social movement, it most always means never. Why? Because there are people today who are experiencing the violence of abortion, the injustice of abortion. That is why we can't be silent. That is why we have to speak up, and we have to be louder than we ever been before. No matter who is in office, what political victories or political defeats we've suffered, we cannot be silent on this issue. We don't have that luxury to passively wait for the perfect. We don't have that luxury. And I think that is why it is more urgent than ever for you to act, for you to stand up, for you to be willing to say that you're pro-life and be proud to be pro-life. Because what you're fighting for is human rights. This is something to be proud of. You are the human rights warriors of our day. And I think about our American pro-life movement, and the folks we'll see this year at the March for Life, and the folks we'll see at your all's March for Life in September, to stand shoulder to shoulder with thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, to say, I'm with them. I'm proud to be with them. But we have to speak up. We have to stand up, because that is the only way that we will win. Because, if you think about and read Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, people want a negative peace. They kind of want this issue to go away. They don't really ever want to talk about this issue, because this issue is uncomfortable. Because those who've made abortion decisions in their past have to reckon with those decisions, have to be healed, have to seek healing. And that's something that's painful for folks. I mean, I always joke about how I'm like the worst person you'd ever want to invite to a dinner party, because I'm going to talk about the things that you're not supposed to talk in polite company, right? I talk about abortion and politics and religion, all the things you're not supposed to talk about. But I'm going to keep talking about those things because I have to, because I have a moral obligation to, because I understand the violence of abortion. I understand what happens inside of the Marie Stopes clinic, the Planned Parenthood clinic, every single day. And so I can't just put my head in the sand. Trust me, sometimes I wish I didn't know what was happening in abortion. If I didn't know what was happening behind those abortion facility doors. But the good news is, I believe, that despite, the negative that we see happening in, either here in America with our presidential administration and the abortion extremism we're experiencing, or what you all are experiencing there in the UK with the rise of chemical abortions like we're seeing here. I just read a terrible article about a doctor that, Marie Stopes has gone after, and now your National Health Service is going after for just simply having the audacity to help women who regret taking that first chemical abortion pill. But I think despite all of that, there are reasons to hope and to be proud that we're a part of this movement, that I think in the pro-life movement, certainly here in America, is winning. We can look at the number of abortion facilities. The number of abortion facilities in America continues to decline. The number of abortionists continues to decline. The number of pro-life, non-violent pro-life pregnancy centers increases every single year. Our youth, the massive grassroots infrastructure that we're seeing in the pro-life movement, when we see at the March for Life, hundreds of thousands. The abortion lobby doesn't have that. In fact, I just heard last week that Planned Parenthood is actually paying students in Catholic high schools in the state of Ohio to talk about abortion with their peers, to refer their peers to Planned Parenthood, because they know that they're losing. We see consistent polling, honest polling. With honest polling is done where there's actual questions being asked that provide context. Americans firmly reject late-term abortions, second, third trimester abortions. They reject paying for abortions with taxpayer funds. They reject discriminatory abortions. It's interesting too. We've seen we can win the plurality of young people when we ask them if an abortion should be committed when the child's heartbeat can be detected. We totally win on that question. The challenge is when you tell people how soon a heartbeat begins to beating, then people start to change their tune. So there's a lot of education that has to be done with that. But I have a lot of hope, and I can go through, I have a whole list of like reasons here of why we should have hope in the pro-life movement. And despite the challenges that we may face, whether in America or in the UK, why we have to keep moving forward. But something we're doing here in the States that I would encourage you to do is think outside of the box of if the political structure is such where you're not able to affect change or make the difference you want, think about something else you can do. So with Students for Life, what we've done in this year, despite having to play the defense in Washington, D.C., and we're doing that alongside the rest of the pro-life movement, we're actually doing something different. We've actually launched our largest campaign ever, a multi-million-dollar campaign called the Pro-Life Future Campaign, where we are in communities. Not only we're in campuses, but we're building relationships with churches. We're online with digital ads. And what we're doing is we're increasing awareness of the abortion alternatives, the nonviolent pregnancy centers. We're decreasing support of the abortion industry in the city, and we're increasing recruiting members to join, new members for the pro-life movement. And so we're doing this on campuses, we're doing this with events in churches, we're doing this online through advertising, really effective advertising where we can actually measure minds changed. And we've got different phone numbers where we're referring women, and we have a 1-800 number where no matter where a woman's in a city, if there's multiple pregnancy centers, she can call one number and get connected, and then an appointment will be scheduled for the center that's nearest her that offers the services she needs. But what I love the most about this campaign is we're going door to door. In neighbors that surround an abortion facility, we're going door to door, and we're talking to neighbors about what's happening in the abortion facility. And we're also talking to them about what's happening and what's available with the nonviolent pregnancy resource centers. And what I found is not shocking, but still maddening, I guess you can say, is that I was door knocking in Denver, Colorado last weekend. Every single person I knocked on the door of knew that there was a Planned Parenthood down the street. Not one person knew that the Planned Parenthood down the street was committing abortions after a child could feel pain. Not one person. And not one person knew there was a pro-life pregnancy center across the street that offers every single service that the Planned Parenthood offers, minus abortion, plus a whole lot more, like free Uber rides to their clinic. Like, they do way more than the Planned Parenthood does. But these are real conversations that we're having. And so we're not waiting at Students for Life and the pro-life generation. We're not going to wait for the perfect moment in Washington, D.C., or to say that, well, there's nothing we can do until 2024 and we have another presidential election. Cross our fingers that a pro-life candidate gets reelected. We're not waiting. We're getting out in the communities because we are proud to say that we're against the violence of abortion. We are proud to knock on doors and say, hey, well, I'm with the Pro-Life Future campaign. I want a pro-life future. This is why. And so this is what I would really I want to encourage you with today is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to act. And think about that at the beginning when I talked about Mother Till and Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycotts and the Greensboro sit-ins. Think about the civil rights movement. Think about other social justice movements that's happened in our world. and the effectiveness of these movements, and be asking yourself, what are you doing? What is your movement doing right now to make that strategic decision to either play nice or call it like you see them, to take the easy road or take the hard road? Are you making that decision to push the pro-life movement forward? I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope that we will be victorious, because the good thing for me is I'm a Christian and I know the battle's already been won. But I know what I'm called to do. I know I'm called to work hard. I know I'm called to tell the truth. I know I'm called to be innovative and creative, to save as many lives as possible, to restore a culture of life that respects human beings from conception to natural death. And it's hard. It's not an easy road. But I'm not alone. I have you. I have the pro-life generation. I have every single pro-life person across the world standing shoulder to shoulder with us. So I would just encourage you, don't give up. Think about your next strategic steps as a movement there in the UK. Think about what you're doing and how it's going to impact your movement 5, 10, 15 years from now. And get active. Don't resign yourself to the fact that you may not be able to change X. You may not be able to change X. You may be able to take baby steps or work towards baby steps. But I'm sure there's something you can do on your campus, in your community, in your church to get active, to save lives, and to speak life. So thank you for what you do. I can't wait to work with you all. And make sure you all tune into my podcast, Explicitly Pro-Life. We're talking a lot about the American pro-life movement, what we're doing, and I hope it's helpful for you. I'd love to hear your all's insights of what we're doing wrong here in the States and what we could do better, because I would love to hear that. I'm always trying to figure out what's our next strategic step. Bye-bye.